Once again, we're attempting to blow the car up. Hopefully it'll roll over this time.
We'll get it right this time.
We have full confidence. Lock and load.
The freeway scene takes place in the Matrix, so already it's not a conventional car chase. And when all those movies, when Bullet came out, or when French Connection came out, and these movies had the kind of seminal car chases that you've seen, that you've never seen before, you know, they're locked in a reality base, a reality world. This car chase, the boys put it in a non-reality world. So you see something that you can't believe you're seeing.
My biggest fear about it was, I guess, dying.
It's really well written, and I suppose that helps get over the pain of really realizing how much there has to be done.
There's stress and politics and fear of failure, you know.
It's so relentless. You know, we get on the cars start going on the freeway, the cops are following us. There's the twins, they're firing, they're morphing. Trinity gets on a bike, she goes the wrong way.
We kept wondering how they were going to actually break out the sequences, and so Larry and Andy would work with Steve Scroach really about the storyboards, and they kept it pretty much to themselves until one day we had this big meeting scheduled on the green table in the Venice office, and we had stunts and transportation and everybody there, and they handed out the storyboards, and everybody opens up the first page. And we got about to like page 2, and everybody looked at it and said, how are we going to do this?
It's huge. It's huge.
The filmmaking process is a collaborative process. It's impossible for like one person or two people to do all the jobs that need to be done.
I absolutely love R.A. He's done a fantastic job.
Well, they didn't say anything other than it was The Matrix, and knowing just the name up front made me very excited. I was flattered. I started when I was 19 years old. I've been in the business for 27 years. My father's still very much a working stuntman. He taught me driving, race motorcycles competitively. And that's when you started out in the industry, especially in the late 70s and early 80s, it was all about cars and motorcycles.
You play for, if at all.
Yeah.
He's across Morpheus this way.
So you know I'm not making a mistake. I'm going to take us off very slowly so we don't run those trucks.
These guys slide in here and a T-bone in here. Now the guys in the fast lane are just boom, right over to the inside car, follow them out. There's nothing physically impossible.
Going this fast, how long does it take to get from there to here? At 50 miles an hour, it's going to be a minute and 15 seconds to get across the mountains. And then in 15 seconds to get from all the way into the
It was nice to get in there in the beginning to see where they were going with it, try and get in their head a little bit about what they wanted to see. And then start working with something which was kind of new for me, was the pre-visualization. Tell them what I had in mind as far as what the traffic patterns looked like and whatever, and then they put it on the computer with actual speeds and distances traveled, and you actually get to see what it looks like before you went out to shoot.
He gives us speeds and basic capabilities of the drivers and how fast they can change lanes and all that stuff. And visual effects department has quite a lot to do as well on the freeway chase, so we are adding our bits and sort of breathing on things in our own way as well.
We have to do some animation based on storyboard and based on the director's vision, and then we have to make sure that this is something that can be shot.
I know the brothers were looking for something special, so we really put our thinking caps on like that and tried to bring a lot of toys to the playing field. At one point, I did a tryout. It was a free-for-all for vendors. We had remote control helicopters. We had go-karts. We had all these toys. Everybody and anybody, just come on up, show us what you got.
It allows you to get down to a regular car height. You can see that we're the same height or lower than any other car on the road, so you get it's more dynamic, realistic.
We were trying out a rig for jackknife on the freeway. This particular rigs were wheels that turned on the trailer that initiated to go. I had to make sure that I was going to get what I really wanted, so I may have pushed the guy a little farther than we should have at the time, but we needed to know. That's why you do tests.
When I first realized what kind of stunts were going to be involved on the freeway, I went up to R.A. Rondell and I said, "I'm scared." And he said, "I know. I'm going to take care of you."
They're very direct turns.
Okay.
They're not a big long, yes. We go through here, boom, we're going like that, boom, you jump out, all right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, R.A.
They have to never break character while they're in the car. So if any sign of fear or concern or anything, we're going to do the shot again.
It was very challenging for me to get on the bike.
Carrie Ann basically had some motorcycle background from her childhood, but I taught her how to ride again.
Start off with a tiny little bike, master my tiny little bike, get on a little bigger bike. If it wasn't for R.A., I would never have been able to get on the motorcycle and do that. Him and my stunt double, Deb.
She makes the hardest cuts. Blows my mind. I mean, they just go like this. Wow.
Debbie Evans, a double Trinity. You know, she's a 3-time national trials bike champion. I've worked with her for over 25 years in cars, motorcycles, whatever. She's by far the best there is.
Debbie's gonna come through here like this. She makes her move across through here. Instead of going all the way up into here, Debbie, and doing this, you're gonna cut through this car here. Okay, and then you do what you want to do to get through there.
And then we went to driving school. And Carrie Ann, to her credit, can drive her ass off. She would like do the 180s and like the 90s, and within like 2 hours, she was whipping the car around like she'd been doing it all her life.
You always go to your right. Say, this is my right. Going back west. Make these moves dramatic. Come up on back ends and, make them dramatic. Get out of my way. I'm going this way. Carrie Ann, you gotta make the moves.
Location scouts out all over America looking for a freeway that we could potentially shut for 10 weeks, which, obviously narrows your options a fair bit.
America's all about roads. There's roads everywhere, super highway structures, cars. Everywhere we tried to go, no one would give up their road.
We did actually find one in the end. Which was in Akron, Ohio. We got there and there was like snow and it was really cold and freezing, lots of traffic authorities and access roads into freeway.
How long was it going to take us to reset? If we were on a practical freeway, 45 minutes to an hour to back up 100 vehicles and put them in number one. I mean, that's just painful.
I remember we were like driving out of the center of Akron, you know, going to their airport. I think Owen said, well, maybe we should build a freeway somewhere.
This is where they're bashing out all the flats for the freeway. They start over the other side there, making the frames, then put the plywood on and then stand them up, and the plasterers put the cement finish on.
We got about 1,000 walls, and then when they get them out to the freeway where the K-rail is being poured right now, they'll all stack on top of that concrete K-rail and then be braced off from behind.
Conceptually, it was fantastic because it enabled us to have exactly the look we wanted, which was kind of like this corridor of death almost.
You walk around the corner and there's just this 1.5 miles of freeway. And the very end of it, it's backdropped by the most amazing vista of San Francisco. Sat at the end of it.
It's probably one of the biggest movie sets that's ever been built.
The set is it's 1.5 miles long. It was amazing the amount of material, and it was like a big void.
A bunch of railroad cars.
A great deal of concrete.
3 lanes of traffic.
Flattage that's over 3 miles long. I couldn't actually tell you how many pieces of timber go into it. It's just a lot of
Times 20.
I forget that I'm on a set a lot of times.
I've shot car chases in downtown LA and Vancouver and Toronto and every place, but never had the ability to actually make a thing from scratch. I mean, we laid the asphalt, we poured the concrete. I mean, we built all that.
It's a giant playground, is what it became.
We can route traffic any way we feel like. Everyone's got enough space to try like full-on stunts with practice space, you know, to spare.
Got a mouthful of rubber. Good. Nice. That's a rule. When you're watching the stunts, keep your mouth shut.
Yeah. This was an interesting show for us because we got to fabricate several different camera rigs. We put one on a motorcycle sidecar that went from 1 foot off the ground up to 6 feet, and the guy would sort of hike out like he was sailing on each side to keep it balanced. The motorcycle descender rig, it sort of looked like a square rigger sailing ship. It was actually, it's hydraulically operated with a motion control system.
I have the capability of getting in the back seat behind you and driving your vehicle. Okay? Which is cool, but you can still use the steering wheel. And we have to come to an agreement. But don't fight me for the wheel, because I've been working out and I'm ready for it. I have a feeling your pastor may give me some assistance. Is that for it? Cadillac gave us their new 2003 sedan and also their SUV, our hero and villain car, I should say, in the chase, which were prototypes, so we had to learn about them too because there isn't a manual that comes with them.
And we had somewhere between 26 and 28 different Trinity vehicles, all with like different like roll cages in them, all with different degrees of bullet hits on them.
You've got cars flipping down beside me, and like rounds, and there's brass hitting me in the head. The whole freeway thing was just amazing.
When you'll cut, make sure you stick this exaggerated up in the air. So you just get it up like that. Let him slide it.
A Rock is such a character. He's like everything you'd imagine in a film set armorer. He's like, it's just big, bad American kind of, look what this gun can do. Boom!
It's just like a standard Glock 17, which is a full-size Glock, but nobody really knows they make one in full auto. I'm the only civilian with them, and they're here for this.
Beautiful.
It looks just like my 19. Brass will be coming out about 1 inch apart on an arc, just like this. Is that right? You'll see it strobed out just like that, about 1 inch apart. You'll see the brass. It's really awesome.
Gunfire is the sound of freedom for Rock Galati. Okay, stand by. And action, Lawrence.
Actually, the project was so big, it was impossible to think about all at once.
RA was able to craft a very complicated car chase and bike chase in a way that has never been seen before.
Looked like a symphony to me, you know, this thing of cars coming and bouqueting out.
Machine gunning into the car.
Jackknifing semis and
5 cameras on the back, and you've got operators on all the cameras, and
4 main cars, each with 222 hits.
it's so relentless.
And then it became a challenge, you know, to try and keep the intensity going through the whole car chase. And the idea is the audience will be completely exhausted by the time it's over.
there was a lot of elements that had to all come together and not go wrong.
You just have to show up and deal with beat by beat by beat by beat.
We call them events. They're not accidents because they're on purpose. Brothers, they push you that little bit farther. We designed something on the computer that was amazing. Now you gotta suck it up and you gotta make it happen for real on camera and not just once. Day one, take one, scene one.
Trinity's car coming along. Twins behind, no gunfire. So we got one camera position there on endless. Then we've got the motorcycle cam.
In the event of an accident, please stay back until we go in.
So I'll slide behind the green bus. We're gonna make a left-hand turn. Let me make the turn.
Action!
The big freeway scene.
Amazing how big it is.
It's a teamwork between the stunt department, the precision drivers, and the background players that are here.
We've got these people here and then another 150 or so back there.
You're paid to be in traffic all day. You know?
I grew up with a big 1.5 acre playground, if you will, in the backyard, and I used to turn my car every which way, sideways in the mud, crazy. I mean, I know how to handle cars.
We've got like 15 people on more walkies interspaced amongst all of the cars. But a lot of times, you know, we'll get reshuffled, so it'll be me running around with the giant bullhorn being professionally irritating.
In case anything gets out of control, we have to know what to do, and we have to be focused. Not distracted by a cameraman doing a documentary.
Okay, and now we're really honestly standing by.
So I'll give you a semi here just so we can sweep by something big and ominous, right? And another one back here. And then up ahead, just give you a couple of stunt cars so it's not the only one in the fast lane.
All right.
Okay.
Let's get out of here then.
Let me know when you want me to go set this traffic up out there.
Can't set up now.
Ah, good. It's taking so long. So Jimmy, same program. Sorry to wake you. Same program, it's just it's the insert car, so it's a little bigger rig. Goodbye. When the insert car goes by you, go middle lane back over to the middle. Yeah, just dive right into the middle lane. Go right into the middle lane. Go hard all the way across to the right lane. Okay?
This is gonna be chaos, man.
Totally.
That's it.
Up until the day I shot on that motorcycle, I said to R.A., I'm not telling you that I'm going to do this.
Any last words?
Pray for us.
On the radio for stop, slow down, whatever, they're going to use right on out.
I mean, I had to keep it down.
Girl, where you
That
going
was
there?
40.
40? 50.
lane and cut back and then right down the middle past the trucks.
We were able to figure out a light vehicle coming in at one speed and a whole array of cars coming in at another speed, a perfect safety path. The bike could fit its way through this puzzle just right.
So we got to mark all the moves with those markers where the cars go, but everything's got to be precise with the camera moves to that position. So she's going against traffic with semi-trucks underneath them and shit.
The safety path that is allowed would be filled with additional virtual cars and thusly look almost, completely impossible.
Truck Top Fight is a brilliant, brilliant piece of action.
And action, jump.
There's the agents show up, then you look up and Morpheus is riding on the truck, like surfing. It's very much like the bathroom fight in the first movie when Morpheus is overcome by Agent Smith. That's why it's really exciting, because Morpheus is incredibly vulnerable, which is why I chose not to wear my glasses for that fight.
Isn't this unbelievable? Look at this. This truck top is going to move through these hydraulics, which makes it really difficult for us because the whole top moves.
The samurai sword, it did require a particular kind of strength in the forearm area that I certainly had to develop.
When you're saying come for me, I mean it's like it's not the same way you say come for me to me. Right.
Come up and they go, all right, Dan, we want you to do this. You gotta come up and here you go. So then,
action!
Daniel, you okay?
Yeah, I need ice.
Action!
You got one, let's go for another one, see if we can't break the glass.
Go kick his ass.
It builds. It's really well thought out and brilliantly executed. So well crafted. It's so well constructed as a piece of entertainment.
Event 3 was where the agent Johnson crawls out of the police car and he's standing on the roof of his car and he jumps and lands on an ND car. It crashes and flips, and then he lands on Trinity's car, our hero, and she continues driving on with him on the front. And I just came up with a concept of how the car, when he leaves, we put a rear engine cannon, so we blew it up, we blew up, and this is Clay Penny's baby, by the way.
We had that rigged with a pneumatic cannon, hood crush, fender blow, bumper flew out, windows blew, and then it flipped over.
So as it does that, this car slides sideways and they do these two cars T-bone here, where they T-bone, they're dragging ramps behind them, so two cars flip.
The idea is to hit them and so they come off the A-arm on the backside of the tire. And what it'll do is it'll ride up that ramp, kicker at the top end of the ramp will pop it and send the car over. Simple.
And then a car comes off the side this way, and then another one back behind, and then behind all of that is Gil Combs in his semi-truck, and he slides it sideways, filling the back of the frame, all coming forward. So the last thing you see is all this unfolding as Trinity's car makes the turn.
Everybody's gonna be pretty much going, whoo, whoo, whoo. Just fade right in back behind him. Split lanes a little bit. Go all the way across to the fast lane to the slow lane.
I'm driving the ramp car with the camera in the back.
very cool shot.
Henry, how we doing on Johnny's cars? Okay, we're good to go? What makes us good to go? Don't yell at me, John.
Once the event unfolds, make sure you pull your cars over to the side before you get out and make any moves towards any other cars. So we always leave a lane open for medical personnel.
Okay. Stay away from the vehicle till we're in and out of it.
We're running one camera at 150 frames a second. Could jam. If it does jam before the event, Greg Lunsell will yell over the radio, abort.
What's up, boys?
We've got 5 cameras on the back, and you've got operators on all the cameras. And I had this sign that was like above me, which was like the bail out point, you know, where if you went past that sign, you were committed and you couldn't stop. Had all these cars barreling down behind the camera vehicle. I'm like looking at all these cars, and then, you know, I go, roll cameras, roll, roll, roll. 2 of the cameras didn't roll, and, you know, I look up at the sign, and like the sign's like, you know, 5 feet, you know, in front of me. So I go, abort, abort. And all these cars, we all come like to a screaming halt, and we stop, and I remember all these doors coming open, you know, and all these stunt guys like getting out and looking at me and going, are you absolutely insane? What did you call abort for, you know? And I said, well, the cameras weren't working. So we go back and we do it all again. It's like this amazing stunt with this sort of ballet of cars flipping through the air and crashing and smashing and sliding and trucks sliding into the back. And I remember walking up to the back of like the Burley van, we called it, which was the director's van. And I throw open the doors and I'm just about to go. That was incredible. And I see those 2 guys, Larry and Andy, look up from the monitors, and I knew we were going to do it again. I'll just get ready to go through the event again, get Clay to tell you what we're doing, and then I'll just get, we'll just tell you where all the paramedics are in place.
Nothing's changed. It's all the same program. We're still we're towing behind the insert car, 50 miles an hour. On an action cue from James, they'll release the cable from the insert car. Release the cable from the flip car, then the insert car. They'll call a cue, we'll flip the car, all the rest of the gags will unfold just like we did the last time. Nothing's changed.
Everybody saw what happened before, do everything exactly the same, and we got it great.
Fire the last one in the car. That's what I'm talking about. Woo! Josh, everybody right here, right on. Everybody. To our medical staff, man, you're right there for us. To my crew, you brought this to life, man. It's insane. I'm sure you'll hear praises from them, but I wanted you to hear it from me. That was intense. That was exactly what we practiced, and that was awesome, man. You guys ought to take it.
plan from the beginning was to take on the hardest and the largest action scenes right off the bat.
The freeway got the most attention because it was by far the most complicated.
Smash, you guys give us your best shot.
It's very rare that you get a mile and a half of free and clear road that you can just, you know, whip cars around.
The script called for, you know, a freeway sequence, and originally we were going to go to Akron, Ohio. In the end, it was better to actually build our own freeway. And given it's the Matrix and the fact that we're trying to control the visual image, we want to exclude trees. We needed to build a freeway that would give us like a mask.
We had an incredibly talented stunt coordinator on this, R.A. Rondell. He was able to craft a very complicated car chase and bike chase, and then he was able to work with the boys to bring the visual effects elements into it.
The whole freeway was pretty much run by the stunt department to an extent. We came up with a realistic pattern of 50 miles an hour on the background traffic and anywhere from 60 to 70 miles an hour on the chase vehicle, so they're always overtaking the traffic. It wasn't chips on the freeway pattern where everybody was exactly placed at one distance or another for a weaving pattern. We tried to make it feel a little bit different. What do you see on the freeway? People tailgating, throwing an arbitrary truck, a bus. It's a teamwork between the stunt department, the precision drivers, and the background players that are here.
Road rage. You really have that? Get it. I use it all the time.
The freeway people, that's the name for this.
They all think I'm crazy, but hey, come from my family, probably would be too.
Pictures up, stand by.
In the very beginning, when we were still first doing the concepts, there's a written word, there's a storyboard, there's a concept, and then you've got the previs. We designed something on the computer that was amazing.
The brothers go into a pre-visualization mode. Because of that, they can put the camera anywhere, really. We try to figure out ways to come up with that same sort of shot in the real world.
Part of the chase sequence happens on a truck top. Obviously, you can't shoot a kung fu fight on top of a truck going down a freeway at 60 miles an hour. So we decided to shoot it inside and simulate the travel.
I'll try. You'll get it. You'll get it. I believe in you. Get it.
A lot of times you can put WD-40 down on the tires, and when you spin the tires, you can get a nice white smoke.
Spent a lot of time getting through a lot of rounds with my machine gun. And I wasted a lot of people on the freeway, which is fantastic.
During the freeway chase sequence with the twins, we went with an H&K UMP. We put a sight rail on top of it here, and then we've taken an M203 grenade launcher and put on to the front of the weapon. Runs extremely well. It's a fantastic weapon.
It's like 700 rounds a minute, and it's got a flame that shoots out that far at the front. That's just amazing to use that.
One of my favorite things that I did in the film, and I got in one take, which was very exciting for me, was my sliding 90 into camera. Yeah, I think they call it a juicy lift. It's all about brake and handbrake and sliding and hitting your mark and starting the turn at the right point.
I had to take a car where I had a camera in it and run up alongside her at 50, 60 miles an hour and slam into the side of her and rub fenders with her down the freeway and stuff. She hung right in there.
That was pretty awesome.
Her driving ability was phenomenal, but I want her to basically think about acting.
The way we decided to do it was partially with Carrie Ann, who was Trinity, and also we had a Trinity motorbike double.
Yeah.
What's back there, Mitch?
Debbie Evans, a double Trinity. You know, she's a 3-time national trials bike champion. And I've worked with her for over 25 years in cars, motorcycles, whatever. She's by far the best there is.
Why are you chasing Trinity?
You know, I don't know.
Being able to pull off what we called Event 3 was a big deal for me.
The roles that R.A. Rondell put together for that smash up, those beautiful sort of cars going like this in the background.
2 cannon rolls in it, 2 dragging pipe ramps, 2 T-bones, and a jackknifing truck, all in the same 250 feet of the freeway, all at 60 miles an hour.
We had that rigged with a pneumatic cannon, hood crush, fender blow, bumper flew out, windows blew, and then it flipped over. We also had Trinity's car rigged with a hood crush and a suspension drop, because that agent will obviously be a virtual one. They had to get that timing down, as well as the 9 accidents happening behind it with 7 cameras.
It's really about what's happening in the foreground and the destruction and carnage that happens beyond it. And because it's in the background, all the height of the cars had to be big.
What makes it better is it's real.
Yeah, you can tell it's real too.
Does anyone think the sheen on his shoe is a tiny bit hot? Okay, fine.
Yeah,
shoot it out.
This was one of the shots where they wanted to take bullet time one step further. So they knew it was going to be a virtual shot, I think, from the beginning.
These trucks are real. Up until this point, it's got the major virtual cinematography challenge, the major virtual background challenge, and the virtual humans.
That's perfect.
That's it, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Been working on this thing for a year and a half.
Yeah. It's probably going to be one of the most expensive shots in the movie.
You've got these trucks ripple and crash and blend with each other, and the fire comes out in a way that it wouldn't normally. If we were just going for real, it wouldn't be nearly as interesting as the kinds of things we get to do in here.
I understand they donated the wood to recycle for an organization that recycles, and that really made me happy.
There was a lot of lumber in 1.5 miles of flattage on 2 sides, so there was 3 miles of kind of flattage. Really good timber and plywood and everything like that.
Actually giving it to Mexico, I believe, where they can use it to actually help build.
They were used for low-income family housing.
So I thought that was great that they were actually putting it to good use.
We were 60 days in San Francisco. 48 of those days were dedicated solely to the freeway chase.
So is that a long time to shoot a single scene?
A sequence? Yeah. I'd have to say it was.
This setup is Muravigian Garage, and he has a Cadillac collection. So we basically needed to get some 18 Cadillacs that were in pretty good condition. The Cadillac Club of New South Wales are all very helpful people. They're all fanatics, and they all have their cars in pretty good condition. And they're all very keen to get in the Matrix. This one's a 1960 Fleetwood, typical Cadillac fins. This is a 1932 Cadillac town car, it's called. It's the only one in the world that actually is on the road. There's one other in Belgium or somewhere. It's in a museum, so very valuable.
Got two drive wheels. It's funny, huh?
We cheated a bit. We have fake steering wheels. We put in the left-hand side and cover the steering wheel on the right-hand side. And in key spots, we have left-hand drive vehicles where we'll see them. So we've got another classic Eldorado. This is the standard 1959. This one is a 72 Eldorado. We blew the windscreen in this one. We bought it, painted it, had it reupholstered, blew the window out. Oh, and the designer and Hugh, the art director, have their ideas about what they want in certain scenes. So it's really just coming up with what they see as the overall idea for the film and trying to match something to that.
There was a sequence in the freeway chase where Trinity picks up the key maker and they've got a bike going against traffic. So what we did is we had this incredible stuntwoman named Deb who we literally drove against the traffic.
They needed a girl who could ride one of the Ducati 996s really well, and that would be what I'm known for. I started riding motorcycles when I was 6 years old, and I started competing when I was 9. The first movie I worked on, I had to jump a 30-foot ravine on a motorcycle.
You couldn't ask for a better person to be in charge of the bike, Debbie. She rides all kinds of motorcycles. She's an extensive car driver. I've worked with her for over 20 years, so there's a certain comfort level I had with her right off the bat.
I can be, at that speed, I can be right up in there.
Okay. It's one thing to have all that metal around you in a roll cage and stuff like that, but Debbie on the Ducati with Will Leong on the back, nothing around him, no helmets, doing it against oncoming traffic was hair-raising. And I feared for them all the time.
Also, that was like part of a visual effects sequence where we wanted to have some, close calls with trucks and cars that would come too close, and some very complicated virtual camera moves where the camera would actually go underneath the truck.
The nature of the way the stunt, choreography works is that, believe it or not, Debbie would rather have cars to aim at.
So it's two cars.
To help her, orient herself.
We had some cars coming at her, and then we also had some markers on the ground which would represent down the freeway where certain cars would be at a certain time. So that was all mapped out on pre-visualization. Then RA and Deb and all the stunt drivers got out there and they practiced with her driving against the traffic.
Why don't you just line this up on this road here for a second and walk through it? Right. So you know where it is?
No.
So Debbie knows where it is? So
I love cutting in and out of the traffic and just laying the bike down sideways. Sometimes we were doing 65 through traffic, just cutting, making hard cuts, and I really enjoyed that.
Being able to pull off what happened on the previs was a big deal for me. The motorcycle rig with Debbie was amazing. I mean, in and out of the traffic with the Keymaker double on the back, totally amazing, blew everybody's mind.
Is that a rehearsal?
I must admit, seeing someone drive at 40 mile an hour into cars coming at you was a pretty scary experience. But she was like solid the whole time. She was an incredible driver. Never seen anything like it, and she would do it over and over again. Come back, would you like me to go a bit closer? Let me go a bit closer.
When you start a race or something, you get those butterflies. The same thing happens when you do stunts. It's the adrenaline kicking in.
thing that you need to know, which is ongoing, which is sort of the backstory. The assignment for the code is really to exponentially go into the detail in any given object and see more and more and more. So in this map, this all here represents the freeway system. There's like clover leaves and like interchanges and stuff like that. Whenever you're looking this way on the freeway, you would see San Francisco, which is not San Francisco, but for the sake of understanding. And whenever you're looking this way on the freeway, you're going to see the Matrix City, which we're basically calling Mega City, and it will contain, you know, where all the other scenes occur.
You do need to know what this city looks like, at least from an art direction standpoint, so you get an overall sense of the plan, and also for things like sightlines, like to know where in the background on the horizon is this mega city coming up.
The freeway was used as step one to create the skyline of Mega City. Mega City took about 2 months from beginning to end, laying out where buildings were, how much sprawl was going to be, the height of certain skyscrapers, how it was going to tie in with the freeway system as well.
It was pristine and beautiful and glittery in the center, and industrial and decayed at the edges. And these are certain things that we sort of figured out on our map.
I did a painting of the mega city, which we keep seeing in the distance.
Even though it's imaginary, we need to know where those things are occurring. So here's the collage of the mega city. At the base here, we have the main urban area, which has the tallest buildings. We've basically taken urban highway design and taken it to a Baroque level here.
It's like really complicated freeways interleaving and, you know, clover leaves and all that stuff.
This is what I was given to start from, actually. So I had a pretty... This is John Gata's drawing.
It was intended to look like that.
The freeway interconnects all the megacity with the suburbs and this industrial wasteland.
You get an overall sense of the plan and also of the sort of organic quality that all of these highways have.
We are developing a camera technique which could only really be realized with virtual environments. That is an extension of Alfred Hitchcock's vertigo effect.
You can see Mega City in the background throughout the freeway chase, but this is the only shot where you actually fly outside of the freeway walls and just completely see everything that is out there.
The idea is that this was Neo's POV and that we wanted Neo to perceive ahead of him where Morpheus and Keymaker were. So we do one of these like vertigo shots that basically, you know, cover like 2 or 3 miles of space, like and zoom straight in on the trucks colliding and then snap back out of the vertigo. So basically using the vertigo, he's perceiving ahead of him, and then we return back to his real world travel.
We started this shot January 2002, finished it almost a year later. Wanted it to kind of feel like a circuit board of a computer.
Everything outside of the freeway walls is actually CG, but then stuff in the distance is stuff that I painted. But it's really hard for me to actually tell you which is my painting and what's CG, because it goes by so fast, and it was so long since I did it. Like that, I think's mine. Yeah, that's mine.
Like to take the elements that we captured when we were out there on location and do a little concept to help the visual effects firm, in this case it's Animalogic, understand the timings. This was the original Viz. The world is rotating, the twins are being pushed up by the wake of the explosion. This is the element for the kind of pull-up part of the shot. And then eventually we ended up with live-action plate of the roads. Then we did pyro plates, and we did blue screen stunts of the twins, which we are manipulating a little bit. This is 100% virtual flame.
They filmed a lot of pyro elements. We took that footage and analyzed it and, you know, found out what it was about it that made it look like fire and smoke. And spend a lot of time writing and tweaking software to get that same look.
Put them all together, and then we will be adding some other CG effects as well for Animalogic.
I made
major effect at this stage would be the twins phasing. Originally, we were trying a lot of experimentation with how far we could take the characters away from reality. Maybe they didn't have any of the things that you would normally expect in a live action scene. We've done a lot of investigation into how jellyfish look, the way you can see through parts of them, how the light affects them.
And we did talk about, you know, translucent undersea membrane undersea life. We thought it was a good ghostly approach.
The way light moves through something like a jellyfish and the edges you get, it's such an amazingly subtle thing, and it's quite difficult to reproduce.
John actually pointed to some of our jellyfish references and went, I have these! You have this one. It's just like, we were like, oh, thank God.
This is the first shot we started, which was, in retrospect, it was probably a mistake because it was quite difficult to fine-tune an effect at an angle like this. The concept work that had already been done by John and Larry and Andy at Eon, and then we took that further, the way that twins have to react in different conditions. The first stage would be the background element, which is just a piece of the freeway with the twins' SUV. And then we shot a separate element of the twin against blue screen. The twin we shot on wires at 72 frames per second, so that when they phase, they go into a different time frame. And part of the makeup of the twins is particle body. So it's reminiscent of sinews and muscles without being anatomically correct. So this is the simulation of the particle system that we do first. It takes a long time to generate all those millions of particles, so we need to do a quick render to just see if we're in the ballpark. When someone moves fast, you don't want all the particles flying away. You want them to maintain the structure of the arm. So we've had to cage them in a way. Okay. And then this is the transition from the live action. This is a basic model of one of the twins. This texture here is basically on a almost skull-like to give them a more cadaverous look when they're phased. When we see the final composite, you don't see all that detail, but we pick up a lot of it as transparencies and highlights and lowlights to make it appear like all that information's there, but we're seeing through it. We have a number of sequences on the freeway that are the agent takeovers. We did the takeovers in the first movie, and the reference was that kind of distortion, that Francis Bacon distortion, and it's a violent and aggressive takeover. It's not meant to be pleasant, so we've had to scan all the characters so we can animate from one head to the other. All the effects were very complementary. Even though it was different companies and everything, it had a really complete whole look.
Would it be like crazy experiment, like maybe like could start the shot maybe even a tiny bit more than 180 and end it with less than 180? It's a bullet time shot that we were going to do as an all virtual background. So there's a lot of debating going on if we could take a plate that approximated this turntable look.
We were going to have a totally virtual shot, but we managed to shoot such a good helicopter plate that we decided it would be good to use it.
The truck, which was intended to be the center of our turntable, needed to stay the same image size the whole time.
So at the moment we're in the process of really stabilizing that helicopter shot to make it look more computer generated, actually. Strangely enough, rather than the other way around.
Involved in working backwards. So taking what we see on film and from that reconstructing computer data that describes the scene that we're looking at. What we've actually developed is some software that actually can analyze exactly what's going on with the truck in order to understand exactly how that object is moving relative to the camera. Because without that, we have no idea where to put the graphics in the scene.
So we could put all of these overpasses and characters onto the truck and then end up stabilizing it so it looks like a perfectly smooth computer-generated move.
There are a couple of CG people shots in this along the way. There's one here where Morpheus gets thrown by Agent Johnson.
The reason that's CG is because the camera move is so difficult to do.
We're going 360 degrees around the character and then coming up and looking down. It's something that wouldn't be very easy to shoot practically.
It actually looks like Morpheus, doesn't it? It's kind of cool.
Okay.
What we decided to do was build something that was based on analyzing a real performance. Can Lawrence Fishburne do a flip like this? I don't know, maybe.
I guess you can't really see it, but we had written a special wind deformer that would show little ripples across his back as he's flying down the freeway. Because we thought, well, this shot is just crying out for wind. So, you know, we just put it in and we kind of snuck it in ourselves.
At the end of the day, all this data is just a bunch of numbers inside a computer. And everything we're doing to them is just a bunch of mathematics. Strangely, it all seems to work, and you can actually get images out of that process.
I don't know. We look at it and we see CGI and we see pixels and numbers running through our heads. And I think the average audience, and we're hoping, will be able to suspend their disbelief and really get into the sequence. Okay? Is that it? Oh, quite a lot of work.
Larry and Andy worked very closely with a company called Pixel Liberation Front, and they created extensive set of essentially dailies.
Pre-visualization is the process of taking storyboards and creating a 3D animation out of it so that you can represent in the real physical world a stunt sequence or visual effects sequence so that in the real world it can be accomplished.
Basically, it's one step beyond storyboarding in that we can have an accurate depiction of the space that the shot takes place in and the time.
We have to do some animation based on storyboard and based on the director's vision, and then we have to make sure that this is something that can be shot.
Visual effects team, the photography team, the art department, the stunts team, we are all working in concert on pre-visualization and planning of all sorts using computer graphics as our medium.
I thought it was really important to early on establish the relationship of the previs that PLF did. So I had Rupin build these models.
So what this is it's a three-dimensional model that's basically a starting point that we can then talk about how to stage action in this environment.
The next stage then is to take, since we have these virtual sets now, is to go into like a storyboarding phase where we can position virtual cameras within these environments and actually plan shots.
Brothers make up their dream shot, and the Pixel Liberation Front puts it on a computer and spits out a synthetic version of it.
We have a model of our shooting stage, or one of the proposed shooting stages, and those blue cones are different sight lines of the different cameras in the whole tractor-trailer fight. Once Larry and Andy have said that's our sequence, that's how we want it to be, we'll go through with John Gaeta and the other supervisors and then analyze, can it actually be done, or how are we actually going to do it?
And if it is impossible, we try to figure out ways to come up with something different, better. Conceptually, it's a hard thing because I'm following a computer that can do anything.
They basically developed every shot they thought they might want to see. Because you can now previs things, you can do more complicated scenes.
The main goals of the previs are to define the creative vision of what the directors want to see in the sequence. Pretty much what we do is do a simple mock-up of the scene, whatever you need to see in the scene. For example, on the freeway chase, we built a freeway, filled it with cars driving at different speeds, and could cover that action from all different camera angles.
The freeway chase had great viz, particularly like the motorcycle against traffic.
We basically fed them the information and they brought it back to us with our exact information. so it wasn't out of line.
RA gives us speeds and basic capabilities of the drivers and how fast they can change lanes and all that stuff.
Feet, movement, speeds cars travel, distance between cars, how long does it take to stop, how long does it take to travel. And particularly Kyle, you know, he'd phone me up. Hey, I got this idea, or there's something I want to run by you. You know, and I go in and we sit down for 15, 20 minutes or whatever, or how long it took. And they just came up with a great concept.
And the process that we're going through is we've devised a shot that we like, and then we'll take markers out onto the freeway, mark out a slalom course for her to ride through.
So we literally walked the freeway and precisely to his plans, put marks on the ground for the pattern of the motorcycle that Trinity rode, along with the motorcycle that had the camera on it, and then we would leave out what was considered too dangerous.
And by prevising it, all the key department people could see exactly what they had to do.
If we get finished with the previs, Zach can cut it together into a relatively tight cut.
So all that then came to me in the editing room, and we cut them into a sequence. In the Siege, we put the cut together, we got a budget back, we saw what was working, what wasn't working, we would introduce new elements, we would take elements that were originally planned and dump them. So it enabled us to really go deeply into the scene before it was shot.
Larry and Andy will kill us if you show a happy-go-lucky skipping a view.
Well, the classic way to do what we do is to make foam core models or have little posed action figures cruising around in a cardboard set or something like that, but that's a little bit difficult to do. Sometimes people make periscope cameras and things like that. The first usage of computers for doing similar to what we do, I think, goes back to the early 80s, where Robert Abel and associates had made some sort of attempt to program motion control cameras via a computer that could show what the camera would see. Some people think it's a very new thing, and certainly it's new in terms of sort of more widespread popularity, but the idea's been around for a long time.
The main point of all this is to, ahead of time, come up with all the camera angles and the lenses that are desirable and the camera moves in order to tell the story.
The symbol that we've done a good job is when we do a sequence and it ends up exactly the way we previs it. That always feels good.
Is that good?
The goal in the end is to make sure that the crews that are going to go and shoot this sequence can actually get out there and do it armed with both the creative vision and the technical planning.
It's really critical to have this kind of previs because it really lets everyone know what they need to be responsible for.
I don't think you could create a scene like The Siege without previs.
The whole point is for the directors to design sequences without regard to the shooting limitations. Our goal is to take the shot that they wanted and put it on the screen for them.
It's pretty much the contemporary way to plan out a feature with, fantastic imagery in it.
Hi, this is John Gaeta, and this is the anatomy of a shot that we would call the truck top crash. What you're looking at here are the conceptual drawings of the truck top crash as drawn by Jeff Darrow in early 2000. The hilariously Darrow-esque detail level is obvious as you pan across and see just explicit, almost psychotic amounts of debris and destruction in every segment of this crash. These conceptuals were later redrawn by Steve Skroce as a sequence including more action like the save of the characters by Neo. What you're looking at here is early previs. There are a number of criteria that we're trying to work out. It's a very wide-angle shot, so the speed of the camera is an issue. We have a long way to cover, and we have a lot of specific subjects that we need to show at the right composition. These two trucks are virtual replicas of two tractor trailers that Owen had designed for this chase. They were measured, digitized, photographed, and reconstructed using image-based rendering and lighting methods. Once the collision occurs, there is a merging of the two cabs, which was A purposeful design, sort of a yin-yang idea where they would fuse to become one. We wanted to make it clear that the two agents were no more. The tires that bounce off are hand animated so that they look cool and tumbly. The flame underneath was originally derivative of some pyrotechnics that Clay Pinney had done for us and eventually replaced with CG flame. We wanted to move under and through the tentacles of flame, but there was a certain difficulty with getting the shape exactly what we wanted at the exact moment that we wanted because we were simulating it. The entire freeway in both directions is a virtual version of the set that we made in Alameda. In this particular shot, all the surrounding city stuff are 3D matte paintings. Lots of details out there which are probably blurred to death in the final version. All the performances are a combination of hand animation and motion capture for the bodies, but it's all universal capture of Morpheus and the Keymaker. And some of the coolest UCAP results that we had were from these two characters. We had Lawrence in the UCAP system, and he was hilarious and very adaptive in that technique. We had a great time, actually, in his capture. He, for this shot, really had to just look like a dude that was terrified, like this was the complete end of everything. But that being said, he gave a very gestural, complex expression, really showing the incredible nuance of the human face. With these later versions, you really start seeing the amount of debris starting to stack up. You have shattering, exploding glass coming from the center. You have engine parts and pieces that are emanating out of the center. You have breaking axles and tires happening underneath. You have things pouring off the side. Lots of these ripples spew little shredded pieces of metal out with them, rivets popping along the edge here. Pop, pop, pop. Here's a better look at the spilt gas on the ground initially ignites. You know what's going to happen next. The flip side, where the explosion occurs, incorporating our tendrils or tentacles of flame, which are almost like an oil-based type of explosion where you have the black smoke, which is what we like. Lots of flaming shrapnel, things of that nature. So we're getting further into the production now, and we're starting to stick in virtual cars that are based off of cars from the chase, and starting to put in background details that help us get a sense of scale and height. There's some very good hand animation in this. My friend Cody did it with a great sensibility for the dynamics of their weight shift. We did try to motion capture some of this by having guys swinging on wires, but because the force of Neo grabbing them and then the sort of overshoot of their bodies turned out to be a really complicated thing to set up, it wound up being animated, and the sort of strength and power that Neo uses to pull them back from the brink feels pretty natural, and it's a pretty featured animation shot. And also a great look at Neo as he rises, you know, doing his thing. Here's the final shot, one of the most successful payoff moments in all of Reloaded. And that has everything to do with the way Jeff drew it in the first place. These movies in general almost killed a lot of the CG teams because Jeff Darrow drew with such a high volume detail level that anything less than more detail than anyone could imagine would be like shy of Jeff's vision of things. So we really pushed the particle systems methods to the hill because we were just really trying to get the kitchen sink in there with the amount of pieces to be seen, which was no small task.
Peter Novak, who was the location manager in America, was able to find some people who were interested in taking the whole of actually the freeway set.
I think there's ultimately 15,000 tons worth of material that went into building the freeway set, the park set, and the cave set. We are working with a company out of San Diego, which basically is going to reuse everything.
They put it on the back of trucks, and they sent it down to Mexico, and I believe they're using it for low-cost housing.
It basically costs the same to dismantle it as it does to throw it in the trash. So it makes more sense to get recycled.
They were able to pull apart the temple They took all the skin, all the plaster off the front of that. They chipped up all of the polystyrene, I believe.
We have a giant set made of this. This stuff is going to be skinned, cut into squares, and be used for insulation. I'd have to say that I don't think there's anything that's ever been undertaken on this size and actually find a home for this much material. The studio supported it. The production supported it. It's hard to even believe it all would wind up in the trash. We have enough material to frame and side 150 homes. It's the right thing to do.
Operator.
Get us out of here, Link.
That won't be easy, sir.
I know. We're inside the core network.
Yes, sir. The only exit.
Good.
You are no longer necessary.
We do only what we're meant to do.
Then you're meant for one more thing. Deletion.
Go kick his ass.
Neo, if you're out there, I could use some help.
What is that?